Wasting her, wasting everything I've got. Yeah. Hello and welcome to today's episode of ADHD Kitchen, where I clean and organize on top of the fridge instead of doing all the canning I'm supposed to be doing. I've gotten somewhat organized, but have I started? No, because the top of the refrigerator is dusty. There, much better. I'm calling that done. Cleaning up, I found these grapefruits, and they're getting pretty sad, so I have to take some time right now to make some grapefruit juice. Now that I've consumed pretty well a quart of grapefruit juice and had breakfast and wiped the counter and cleaned the wall over there, I think it's safe to say I can finally start canning. Alrighty, so at long last the recipes will be from the Ball recipe book of the all new Ball book of canning and preserving. I'm cooking chicken curry and doubling the recipe for the hearty chicken stew. That being said, I shall need about 16 jars, and that's what I'm starting with. I'm starting with cleaning the jars. Starting with cleaning the jars. Here I'm washing all of the lids and checking them all for any sort of dents and scratches along the edges. The dents can prevent seals, which you don't want after taking all this time to can your food. The scratches can just get rusty and kind of mangy. So I'm doing that for blah 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 blah. There we go, rinsing them off. And then go ahead and put them on the stove in some nice warm water just to make sure the rubber compound on the back of the lids softens up and creates a nice strong seal on the jars when I go to process them. I've just realized I put the jars exactly where I wanted to prepare the raw chicken, and now I'm gonna have to move them over. The second thing that I was realizing, I don't remember what the second thing is, so I guess I'll start by moving the jars over. I've remembered what that second thing was, and that second thing is that my phone is dying and needs to be plugged in. Fancy that, huh? Fancy that. Can't believe it. I'm gonna start with the chicken curry, 1 jar meal. The recipes are written out in this like super straightforward, step-by-step way, and so it's really easy to understand. Even if you've never pressure canned before, like this is the best, because even if you mess it up, like it's really like the most minimal amount of work for canning that you can possibly do, because nothing needs cooking before going into the jar. All the cooking happens from inside the jar. So all of the recipes are written here, and the instructions here are the same for each of these recipes. Oh geez, these are the crying onions. Don't make a huge mess, just make a small mess, not a huge one, because it sucks to clean up. I don't like to clean up, but I must, so let's just make a small mess. I'm crying. My eyes. Oh. Life is so nice. You know why? Because somebody in this house sharpens it, and it's not me. Oh, a child's song is gonna get stuck in my head. Stop with your singing, stop with your songs. But it's so hard to just stand here by myself in silence. Oh my god, stop. So, funny story. I just ran out of this salt and I drove to go get more salt because I thought I had no more salt. I don't usually use iodized salt for canning. I forget exactly why, but there's some special reason why you don't use that. And so anyways, I bought Himalayan salt. Himalayan salt you can use for canning. It leaves like kind of cloudiness sometimes, but for I think meat, it doesn't matter. I picked up the salt and then I realized that I didn't even need salt at all because I have this massive bag of canning salt. So now I have a lot of salt. More salt. I've got more salt. It's fine. This recipe calls for raisins, but I'm using apricots instead.
Bought a few things. Okay. So no more game store for Amber for a while. Probably safest if I do go with someone.
Oops, I may have chopped that too much. I don't know, what's the difference between diced and finely chopped? This here is the massive bag of chicken I'm working on canning today. I'm gonna go ahead and weigh it on the scale. Each jar gets half a pound of chicken, so I'm gonna dice it up on there, measure half a pound, and stick it in each of these bowls right here. It's looking and smelling pretty good indeed. The final step of the canning process is to top each jar off with stock. This is some chicken stock I made from the same recipe book a couple weeks ago. Stir, stir, stir. As you pour the broth into the jars, you want to make sure that you stir them right down to the bottom with a spoon or a knife to make sure you debubble them entirely. If there are bubbles left in the jars, it will affect the headspace. These are my stairs. They are measured in 1/4 inch increments. This recipe calls for 1 inch of headspace. If you have too much liquid, no problem. Just use a spoon to carefully adjust the headspace. You want it to just touch. And there we go, 1 inch of headspace. You can see the stairs have the numbers written on the side in case you can't figure it out. Okay, finally we take a paper towel and some vinegar. It cuts the grease on all of the rims to make sure that you get a nice clean seal, because it's especially important when you're canning meat because it's greasy. And sometimes grease can prevent a seal from forming.
Mom?
Yeah?
Are you coming? Can you pour the beer by true?
Yeah, I'm coming in just a sec. Fish these out of the warm water on the stove. And just try not to touch like the inner part so it stays clean. Just the outer part. Set it on top of the jars. And then tighten it to what's known as fingertip height, which is like barely tight. Some people tighten it until it starts turning on the counter. I prefer holding it and gently turning it until I just meet resistance. Do not tighten it a lot, otherwise the lids will buckle as the jar vents inside of the canner. This is what they look like going into the canner. Really, really colorful and nice. When they come out of the canner, they look pretty disgusting and beige. But for now, they look really good. Hold it like this, so you look good. Alrighty, it's after dinner now, and I'm on to the second recipe finally. Yay! Let's see how fast I can do this. It is a race. A race against bedtime and midnight and stuff. Getting completely distracted by my plant's suffering. This next recipe has to be cooked, and the first things that go in are the mushrooms and onions. After they saute a little while, then go the carrots and the celery and potatoes, after which come the wet ingredients. So what I'm beginning with is I'm cutting mushrooms and onions in a bowl, and then I'll put the potatoes and carrots and celery in there, and then I'll start cooking. Got my ginormous stock pot, and my lid's still sitting there. It's even darker outside now, and we'll see how I go. I mean, it's gonna go perfect. Perfect. It's just gonna take a long time. It's dark out now, and I finally have the vegetables cut. Cooking. Time to add the mushroom Alright, you get the point. Stir it up. I need 2 hands of this. Okay. The mushrooms and onions have been simmering for the prescribed 2 minutes. Mushrooms are lightly browned. I must add the carrots, the next 2 ingredients, being celery and potatoes. Saute these for another 2 minutes before adding the stock and wine. Alright, well, I jumped the gun and added the stock. Again, this is chicken stock that I made a few weeks ago. And then we've got some white wine. Okay, 2 teaspoons of thyme. 2 teaspoons of salt. Just wanted to say I'm using the Himalayan salt because I went and I got it today, and I'm using it. That trick wasn't useless and for nothing at all. That's pretty much half a teaspoon. And a couple scraps of bay leaf. Let's just hope that I can fish out all of those bits when it's done. Bring to a boil, and then reduce heat and simmer for 10 minutes. I battled the crap out of the frozen peas, and they ended up all over the floor. And well, and a whole ton of onion skin as well. Stew has finally come to a boil. So now I'm going to turn it down back to around medium.
simmer it for 10 minutes. In the meantime, we'll set up the pressure canner.
The canner looks pretty ridiculous on the stovetop here because the elements are all somewhat broken and don't heat things up very quickly. So this small element here is the only one that really works to bring it up to pressure, even eventually. It still takes a long time. Before beginning, the canner needs 2 inches of water in the bottom, and so I've marked my little pokey stick here at the 2-inch line, and so I can easily use it to fill my canner with water.
Water level 2 inches. That is simmering away, kind of maybe a little too fiercely. Turn it down a hair. My stove is challenged. That's okay, it gets the job done, and that's what's important.
This is a hot stew, and so you want to start with your canner hot. If you were canning something cold, you'd start with a cold canner. Placing this round thingy in the bottom here will help protect the jars from being directly against the heat source, which can cause your jars to crack otherwise. It's a handy dandy thing.
10 minutes simmer is up. Now we add the peas. 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. Now the chicken, which has gotten juicy, so I'm gonna add it with like a weird holy sieve spoon. Try not to make it disgusting raw juicy chicken mess. Most of this juiciness ended up in there anyway, so nice idea. Did not work. Yeah, see with this recipe, you want it obviously when you're ladling it into jars to all be even, but all the peas are floating to the top. They don't stir, so how do you make it even? Alrighty, this is done. Come on, you. Alright. So our jars are all full. I have 2 jars that have no chunks in them except for just broth, so I can make gravy out of those guys. Or like cook rice in broth or something like that.
Don't forget to cloth and vinegar the rims, and then you can magnet out the lids and fingertip tight the little round rings. Go ahead and lift the jars into the canner. When the bottom layer is full, then place the round circle separating thing on top, and then place the next jars within.
The canner is now completely full. It seems pretty crazy to have it that full, but that is how it is. I googled it and that's how it goes.
Now with the lid, you want the arrow here to line up with this little divot and the gap all the way around the canner to be exactly even. Here I am completely struggling to make the lid completely straight. You need it to be absolutely perfect because this canner has a metal on metal seal, and if it's at all crooked, the seal will not form and the canner will not come up to pressure. As I start tightening the wing nuts of the canner, I begin tightening opposite sides just until I meet resistance, and then going around the canner opposite, 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 tightening slowly until it's fully tight. And now it's just a matter of waiting for steam to begin to vent profusely from this vent hole here.
Once it begins to go, then you begin a timer for 10 minutes, and then you place the weight upon the vent. Time to drink this coffee. It's been sitting on the couch. Time to drink this coffee that's been sitting on the counter all day. Some maple syrup. Probably made it too sweet. Well, I'll have to drink it anyway. I can't waste maple syrup. So a dash of cinnamon just to be fancy. is now profusely venting. I can now start the timer for 10 minutes.
Here is the weighted gauge for my pressure canner. Depending on your recipe, it may call for 10, 15, or 5 pounds of pressure, and you'll place it on the vent hole according to your recipe. The canner has now been venting for 10 minutes, and so we'll go ahead and put the weighted gauge on the 10-pound setting. And we'll see that dial slowly begin to creep up. We want it to sit at around 11 pounds of pressure, just one tick above that 10 there. This is a 921 All-American pressure canner. It has this excellent dial gauge here, which shows you exactly what pressure the canner is at, so there's never any wondering or having to guess the jiggle numbers of the weight. It has this valve back here, which will bust out if the canner ever does climb above a pressure that's deemed safe. It has these little things which are supposed to be a safety mechanism, but I have my doubts. And the biggest, strongest, most awesome feature, I think, is these wing nuts here, which securely hold the lid fastened. It'll take about 10 to 20 minutes for the canner to come up to pressure.
Almost there. This is making hissing noises. Pretty crispy. Start the timer, 1 hour and 15 minutes. I have to stay close by and listen to the shaking of that to make sure that now that I've changed the temperature, that this doesn't drop below 11 pounds of pressure. Otherwise, I have to start the process again.
Well, 1 o'clock passed, 2 o'clock passed. It is now 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm taking the weight off of this canner and going to sleep. Good night. And good morning. I am very tired. Let's see how these went. Okay. Well, looks like they all sealed pretty well. Unfortunately, in this video, I never took them out, and I never took any pictures of the finished product. Sorry about that. Thanks for watching. Bye!